Welcome back to Andy Odovok Dongle Madness. For today's episode, I'll be doing a dongle review for this Moondrop Click. Let's check it out. Moondrop Click is an ultra compact form factor dongle by Moondrop. Obviously, it is pretty much very simple. First, I'd like to thank my buddy Darren Lee for lending me this unit. This is not mine, so I'm just getting it from him so that I can do a review for this particular purpose. And as can be seen here, the construction is pretty much quite simple, right? So I'm just gonna read out the basic configuration for it. It is a 32-bit 384 kilohertz rated dongle with just one VRMS of power and 120 dB of signal to noise ratio. So supposedly it is a very silent background dongle. And even though it is not advertised here on Moondrop website, it is essentially a Realtek ALC 5686 DAC inside. And I will show you later exactly what are those things. So I have shown you the basic configuration for Moondrop Click. That is essentially what you can see on the page and also on Moondrop specification. But what I will do now is essentially trying to compare Moondrop Click against other dongles which has already been released in the market using similar ALC 5686 DAC. So let's just first connect Moondrop Click and see how does it look like when checked using TTGK app, which I normally use. So I'll just open it up, as you can see on screen right now. Okay, and you just click headset parameters. All right. So now pay special attention to that vendor ID. It is 3034 with whatever number that's at the back there. And of course, manufacturer is Realtek. Product ID is 19426. That is essentially ALC 5686. And most importantly, just observe the serial number there. Okay. So this is Moondrop Click. Now I will remove it. And I have with me, obviously, this Avani. Avani is also ALC 5686. Now let's have a look. How does it look like when attached to TTGK app? Open up again. On headset parameter. Okay, there. Have a look at that. Vendor ID 3034 as well. Manufacturer obviously Realtek. And product ID is 19426 as well. Pay attention to that serial number there. So, what does it mean? It means that these two are practically identical. Yes. Okay, to bring it a bit further, let's just try now another ALC 5686, which is Muse Hi-Fi M1. Plug it in. So, and then run TTGK again. Okay. All right. For some reason, it is showing a bit differently. Okay. But the vendor ID remains the same, 3034. And it's clearly written there as ALC 5686. Okay. But the product ID is slightly different. So does the serial number. And if I were to read using the product ID itself, I would assume that this M1 is perhaps an older model or a variant of it. Okay. Now, I have shown you all three of them. Let's dig a bit more into the sound aspect of it. And to be frank, I would not go too much into details or the sound aspect of it for the fact that these two are identical. And I am already very familiar with Avani. So let's just go back to Moondrop Click. The way I would describe it, it is one of the most analytical sounding ultra compact dongle you can find nowadays in the market, aside from, for example, like Abigail or CX Pro. And one of the things that I like so much about this particular implementation of ALC 5686 is that it is very strong with technicalities, despite being relatively warm with the tone, the timbre balance, and everything. Okay, it is not as bright as CX Pro or even Abigail, but it is also a bit more, let's say, what's the word for it? Colored. Yeah, I will admit it. Because of that warming effect that it has over the entire spectrum of the dynamics. However, having said that, this Avani and even Moondrop Click will suit really well with stuff like this Etimotic ER2XR, which is naturally bright, and also this Tanjim Zero. I'm just showing you two examples, but I can tell you the majority of my listening device are 90% neutral bright type. So they pair really well with this Avani and Moondrop Click. Because like I say again, they are practically identical. They came from the same factory, and most probably they even come from the same batch of releases, hence the similar serial number. However, there are slight differences when I compare it against this Muse Hi-Fi M1. And I believe this Muse Hi-Fi M1 is also sharing the same ALC 5686 together with another popular ALC dongle, which is J. Kelly JM04 Pro. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is that when I compare side by side between Click and M1, Avani and M1, I can visibly hear that this is offering slightly less power, and I have to crank up volume at least 3 steps up in order to match the loudness. And when the loudness is matched, I must admit that the sense of the sound is pretty much similar. The sound signature is similar. The way it handles technicalities are pretty much similar. However, I can hear that using a very resolving IEM like this one, I can tell that it is slightly a bit brighter on this M1, just slightly, and a bit less in dynamic density or richness, the density of the sound itself. So they do have differences, but not between these. They are identical, but this one have some differences. So that is pretty much applicable to also J. Kelly JM04 Pro. So let's just conclude this about this Moondrop Click. I'll just make it simple. It is another viable option for people who wants to have something which is built differently, but not necessarily similar, not necessarily different sounding than the rest of ALC 5686, I must say. And depending on where you are, right, perhaps it is easier for you to get Avani, then Avani is still a better option. But if you already have Avani, then I don't see any purpose buying Moondrop Click. Or if you already have Moondrop Click, there's no purpose buying Avani, vice versa. All right? Okay, so there you have it. Simple and short. And with regard to Dongle Madness rating, you would ask where does this rank? It is definitely alongside the likes of Avani and Zumi, because let me just remind you again, Avani and Zumi is practically the same thing. So does this one. Okay? Until next time, thank you. Bye.